Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me. As always, the 2024 NFL Draft might have concluded a month ago, but here at Saturday to Sunday, we continue to cover it from every angle possible. If you have missed any of the 8 previous episodes, we did our mini recap division by division podcast series, 8 episodes, about 18 to 23 minutes or so in length, where I talked about every single team in each division, favorite picks, value picks, questionable picks, overviewing the entire draft haul from every single team. I ranked my favorite drafts by division, ranked all the teams in the NFC East, NFC North, so on and so forth. And that was the 8 previous episodes. Tonight, I turned the page back to the fantasy lens. We did original Dynasty Rookie Rankings the weekend of the NFL Draft. Tonight, we're going to look at the first time our IDP Dynasty Rookie Rankings for those people who have not had their Dynasty Rookie drafts yet and still have to draft for them, or, for trade purposes, startup drafts, anything that you still have on the docket for the summer months. So I'm going to share my IDP rookie rankings. If you have access to the, rankings notebook, which is a part of the S2S Premium Notebook package, you will have these will be updated in real time. So any changes I make the rest of the summer, you will have access to them in the 2024 S2S rankings notebook. So let's jump right into it. Now, again, the caveat is every single IDP league is different. Every single IDP league is different in terms of what positions, how many IDP spots. So this is a very broad, generic ranking. Obviously it could be different and catered to your league. If you're in some weird IDP settings, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter and let me know what your rankings look like if you want to hear how I might adjust things based on your unique rankings. But I'm going to kind of go through and share my DT ranks for people who play in leagues that have a DT spot. I'll talk about where some of the top DTs might be if they were included with the D-line and the edge guys. I'll talk about my D-line and edge group, which now has become more of the norm, where those outside linebackers used to be with the linebacker designation. Now that hopefully most settings have them with the edge position and the DEs for appropriate evaluation. And then the linebackers and then the secondary all grouped together. Obviously, tackles have always been the thing that carries a lot of weight. So that's more of where these things are skewed towards. But I know there's a lot of other leagues out there now that, give a lot of points for interceptions, passes, batted down, stuff like that. So I know settings have tried to level out the playing field a little bit, which is why I thought kind of ranking them just by position was a better approach. So hopefully, for any rankings that you might have, it would kind of serve fit. Obviously, if tackles weren't worth as much and passes defended, maybe cornerbacks bump up a little bit. But historically, the defensive backs, the most valuable fantasy IDPs from the defensive back position usually have been the safeties. So, that's kind of how I have it ranked as well. But let's jump right into it. Let's start the DT group. I'll share my rankings, then share some thoughts on some of the players. First up, at the one spot in my DT ranks is Brian Murphy, the second out of Seattle. Number 2 is Jer'Zhan Newton out of Washington. 3 is Braden Fisk, who went to the Rams. Number 4 is Chris Jenkins, who went to the Bengals. Number 5 is Root Ororo, who went to Atlanta. Number 6 is Michael Hall Jr., who went to Cleveland. Number 7 is Mason Smith, who went to Jacksonville. Number 8 is DeAndre Sweat, who went to the Tennessee Titans. Number 9 is Brandon Dorlus, who went to Atlanta. And number 10 is Dwayne Carter out of Buffalo. If you have access to the notebooks, I go all the way down to 15, but I think I'll cut it off there. The top 10 DT ranks. Now, again, I think a couple of these guys really stand out. Obviously, at the top of the list, Brian Murphy. I talked about him. I thought he would, if he would have won pick 8, where the Falcons stunned the world and took Michael Penix, I would have thought it was a good pick by Atlanta. Very good athleticism, the movement skills. He's got play strength and power. He's got first step quickness. He's just a guy who I think is a 3-down player, Going to get a lot of pressure from the interior as a run, as a pass rushing defensive retack who could also be a run disruptor as well in the backfield. I think he steps right into a big role from year one. He'd be the guy that I think kind of stands alone at the top of this. But I really like Jer'Zhan Newton. Obviously, it came out post draft that he had another injury that was not disclosed prior to the draft, which makes a little bit more sense of why he fell to the top of the second round. But he's another guy, while he's a little undersized, those are the guys that sometimes are most viable in IDP settings. He's an interior disruptor. He gets after the quarterback. He can play to run well. Love the athleticism, the speed, the burst, the instinct that he plays with. Lot to like about Newton's game. I think in that Washington kind of revamped, they traded away a couple key pieces along that defensive line. I think Newton's going to get a chance to really emerge there and be a significant part. Braden Fisk, you talk about the Rams made a bold trade up to get him in round 2. I think that speaks volumes on what they think of him as the player. Another guy on the undersized aspect of it, but the athleticism, eye-popping, the burst, the footwork, the first step quickness. He got good hand usage. A lot to like about him. I love him as a guy who follows Florida State closely. I really was intrigued by him. I was surprised about the bold trade up for him, but there was a lot to like about Fisk's game. Chris Jenkins, I think the landing spot with Cincinnati is an ideal spot for him. I think he's going to emerge there into a starting defensive tackle sooner rather than later. I like the athleticism, but he combines that with really good play strength, toughness, physicality. He's got first step quickness. He can get to the quarterback and be that interior disruptor. And I think then two other guys who I think really weren't being drafted are Rukaroro and Michael Hall. Both of them also on the undersized aspect, but really good athleticism. Ruke is a guy who I think he was pinpointed as the guy that Atlanta wanted. And I think they have big plans for him. That first step explosiveness is really dynamic. I know he was a surprise pick at the top of the second round and with a trade up, but I think he's a guy that they have pigeonholed exactly the plan for him. They think he could be a major disruptor from the interior. So I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities for tackle for losses and a lot of opportunities for sacks coming from that defensive tackle position. And then Michael Hall is another guy really intrigued with. I really love the short area quickness, his initial bursts. He had a great Senior Bowl week leading into the pre-draft process. A lot to like about him. Cleveland's got a pretty loaded defense, but I think Hall will get an opportunity there down the line. I think guys like Mason Smith is more of a developmental stash guy. We've still never seen him put it all together. Former, big-time 5-star recruit. A lot to like about his game, but he hasn't really materialized into a lot of production yet. DeAndre Sweat was a surprise early second round pick, especially, with the DUI incident and everything. I think he's going to be a really good run stuffer. He's got, rare special size. And, for a man that size, he's got good athleticism. But I think he's going to be more of, consistently takes on 2 blocks, a weapon as a nose tackle, but I don't know if it's going to translate to a lot of fantasy production. So I think guys like Mason Smith and Sweat are more kind of stash guys, where I'm intrigued by the other guys, a lot of them on the undersized aspect, but can get after the quarterback. So that would be kind of where I see my DT rankings at this point. If we take this over to the DE edge group, it starts out with Latu from drafted by the Colts as the first defensive player taken. Second was Jared Verse, who went to the Rams. Third in my rankings is Dallas Turner, who went to Minnesota with that aggressive trade up from 23 to 17. Fourth is Chop Robinson, who was drafted by the Dolphins in round 1. Fifth is Chris Braswell, who was drafted by the Bucs in round 2. Sixth is I have Darius Robinson with the edge group, who was drafted late round 1 by Arizona. I have Marshawn Nealon, who was drafted on day 2 by the Cowboys. 8th is Braylon Trice, who was drafted on day 2 by the Falcons. Number 9 is Jonah Ellis, who ended up with Denver on day 2. Number 10 is Alex Hunt, the developmental pass rusher, who ended up with the Eagles on day 2. And then rounding out is Austin Booker, who ended up with the Bears. At number 12, Adisic Isaac, who ended up with Baltimore. And then 13, Javon Solomon to Buffalo. Muhammad Kamara at 14, who ended up with the Dolphins. And 15, Brandon Jackson, who ended up with the Rams. I think the top, you can kind of rank Latu, Verse, and Turner in any order, and I think you could kind of make a strong argument or case for it. I have Latu up there at number one because I think he has the best arsenal of pass rush techniques. He is got the best production. He has the most repertoire in terms of how he beats his man. The first step quickness. He's got bend off the edge. He's got athleticism. He's got great play recognition. Uses his hands well. Lot to like about Latu's game there. Obviously, the injuries is kind of always going to loom over him. He had to like medically retire during his college football season, but now being cleared, first defensive player taken. There's a lot to like a lot about Latu's game, and I think he deserves to be up there as edge one, as the combination of a guy who could play to run well, can drop in coverage if need be, but could also get after the quarterback and potentially be a double-digit sack guy. Second guy on the edge group, Jared Verse and Dallas Turner. It's really more of Turner, I think, is the guy that offers the higher ceiling, but I think Verse offers the much higher floor. Jared Verse, good athleticism, but great power, uses his hands well. He's got upfield bursts. I love the play strength. He runs with a high motor. He ends up there in the Rams, who had a lot of intriguing defensive pieces. Obviously, they're getting over the retirement of Aaron Donald. Verse, and who I talked about before, Braden Fisk, is going to be responsible to kind of pick up a lot of the slack. But I think Verse is a guy who plays the run really well. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's like a 12 sack kind of guy, but I think he could be a guy that could be 8 to 10 sacks, play to run really well, have pretty high tackle numbers. So a lot to like about Verse. And then Turner on the other side, freaky elite level athleticism. The length is rare, the footwork. He's got closing bursts. He's got first step explosiveness and bend, but he's still a developmental raw pass rusher. He's still got refinement to his game. So I think the ceiling is higher. I think the floor is lower compared to a guy like Verse. I think Latu offers the best combination of ceiling and floor, which is why I put Latu up there as my number one edge group. Chop Robinson, obviously an explosive pass rusher. I think that's going to be his primary role early on. I think his fantasy viability might depend on how much he morphs into a more complete player. Is he a guy that's just going to play on X percentage of snaps and more of a pass rusher role? Or is he going to eventually work his way into a guy who's on the field, 70, 80% of the snaps, also, plays to run well, gets enough tackles to be really fantasy viable? I think that's the intriguing part with that. I would say if I was going to include the DTs, I'd probably start mixing in Murphy and Newton right around here after the top four there. Obviously, Latu at 1, Verse at 2, Dallas Turner at 3, Chop Robinson at 4. I think I'd probably have Brian Murphy there slotted into the 5th spot. And then maybe Newton there. So a couple of those D tackles would be mixed in there. I think in terms of if we stick to the edge guys, I kind of think I think the top 3 is almost their own tier. I think Chop Robinson is kind of in his own tier. And then after that, it's a lot of these day 2 guys. Personally, I like Braswell the most. I thought he was the best day 2 pass rusher. I like the combination of athleticism, first step, quickness, the ability to bend off the edge. I think he's got upside starter traits to be an edge defender, or if he doesn't be a more complete player, at least a situational pass rusher. So I think guys like Braswell, Darius Robinson reminds me a lot of Cameron Hayward, a guy who I think might be best as a 5-tech defensive end, really good power player, great length, intriguing guy, but he kind of I think he'll be an 6 to 8 type of sack guy. He's going to need to get a lot of tackles to really kind of elevate his game as a fantasy guy. And then the other guys on day 2, I think they're guys that you kind of stash and wait to see how quickly does Nealon become a part of Dallas's, starting lineup. Does he get that opportunity? Who emerges from all the Falcons guys? Does Trice become a guy who starts, taken where he was taken, they wanted to develop into a starter, but it's more of a wait and see. Same thing with Jonah Ellis. I really like Jonah Ellis's game. Only average athleticism, but I love the hand usage, the pass rush techniques, the counter moves, high motor. But he might really just materialize to be a rotational rusher at the next level. Hunt is really interesting, but Philadelphia is playing a little bit of the long game. I think with Hunt, I think we're going to see him in bits and pieces. but I do have him a little bit higher than I think some other ranks out there because I am intrigued by him. He was one of my guys. I like the athleticism, the first step bursts and quickness, but he's more of a guy who's going to be brought along slowly there with Philadelphia before he maybe really gets an opportunity there to kind of unleash that pass rush potential on a more consistent basis. If we take this to the linebacker group, first up, Edgerrin Cooper, who the Packers took in round 2. Next up is Junior Colson, who Jim Harbaugh reunited with his former player on day 2. Pick for number 3 on the linebacker rankings was Peyton Willis, who fell all the way to the latter part of round 3 due to some medical concerns. The rumors are he doesn't have an ACL, but great player nonetheless. 4, I have Trevin Wallace, who ended up in Carolina. There's a lot of opportunity there for him to emerge pretty quickly. 5th, I have Cedric Gray to Tennessee. He's going to get an opportunity to emerge there into a starter, I think by maybe not year 1, but definitely by year 2. 6th, I have Tyrese Knight out of Seattle. 7, Jordan McGee, who went to the Commanders. 8, Jeremiah Trier Jr., who ended up at the Eagles. Number 9, Maris Liafo, who went to Dallas. Number 10, Ede Ulafelicio, who went to Buffalo. J.D. Bertrand, who went to Atlanta, was number 11. Tommy Eichenberg, number 12, who went to the Raiders. Tyron Hopper, 13, to the Packers. Jalen Ford is at my 14 spot, who ended up with the Saints. And then rounding out my 15 and 16 linebackers are Darius Musso, who went to the Giants, and Nathaniel Watson, who went to the Browns. I can't remember another year that I thought the linebacker group for IDP leagues was less and interesting is maybe the right word. I think there's a couple guys here at the top, but really, the only guys I'd be really excited about drafting in a fantasy league are Cooper, Colson, and Wilson, the top 3 guys. I think Cooper's clearly the guy who's going to get the most immediate opportunity there. I think Colson's going to get on the field too. So I don't put a big gap between Cooper and Colson. I actually like Colson best on film. I just think Cooper might have ended up with better opportunity for immediate 3-down capabilities, but I think they should warrant going in rookie drafts very similar to each other. I don't think there's a big difference between Cooper and Colson. I do think there's a little bit of a gap then before Peyton Wilson should come off the board. You got the injury factors. Pittsburgh's got a good defense. He was a late round 3 pick, almost a day 3 pick. So I think to me, Cooper and Colson kind of are the top 2 guys. I'm intrigued by, like I said, their 3-down capabilities. I love Junior Colson's physicality, his play strength, his aggressiveness, his ability to get off blocks. Cooper, I like him best as a guy who does a lot of blitzing. He's got great athleticism, sideline to sideline. He's got range. He's got bursts. He's got, great movement skills. So there's so much to like about Cooper and Colson. Wilson, take away the injury concerns, another guy, great athleticism. He's got range. He's got sideline to sideline speed. He's got agility. He can change directions well. He can cover. He can blitz. So much to like about Peyton Wilson's game if he checks out. But after those 3 guys, like I said, Cooper and Colson are 1 tier. Wilson's kind of in his own tier. I then put like Gray and Wallace as 2 more draftable guys, but I'd kind of let the board fall a little bit. I think they both have the chance to become, starters. I think Wallace's athleticism is unbelievable. I classified as great. Cedric Gray, but probably classified as very good. There's a lot of upside to both of them to become starters, but I think it's more of a long game. So I kind of think Wallace and Gray should come off the board kind of in a similar range. You're kind of hoping that those guys materialize into starters, potentially the ability to play on all 3 downs and make an impact as not only, in tackle numbers, but also maybe blitzing and picking up some sacks there as well. After that, Knight, McGee, Trotter, those would be like the next tier. But I kind of really think we're talking about guys who are probably going to morph into depth pieces. I think Knight with his draft capital will probably be given the opportunity to morph into a starter down the line. I like Jeremiah Trotter the most on film, but Philadelphia, they took him, I believe it was round 5. He fell a little bit further than people expected. But I would take a shot on him and kind of stash him. So I think Knight, McGee, and Trotter kind of make up that next tier. Knight with the best draft capital would put me looking at him first in that tier. And then McGee and Trotter would be 2 other guys that I do think if the opportunity arose, they could develop in the starters at the next level. And then after that, whether it's Liafu or Bertrand or Eichenberg, I think those guys are really just, late round stashes. See, kind of wait and see if any of those guys develop and morph into starters at the next level. Let's round out this IDP rookie ranking discussion with the defensive backs. This is where you kind of blend in the DBs that are safeties and corners together. Like I said at the top, usually safeties, tackle guys get a little bit of a boost, but league settings have kind of started to adapt over the years. So I do think there's, a lot of guys I'm intrigued with are guys who are going to play the nickel and do a little bit of everything. I always go back to like the original guy who I saw, across the board, the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, as a guy who could do a little bit of everything. I think you have some of those in this mix. And then, towards like the back end of like the top 10, you start getting some deep corners in there who are going to be guys that can tackle, can break up passes, have ball skills. So you see those guys kind of blended in as well. So here are my defensive back rookie rankings for the 2024 class. And number 1 is Cole Bishop out of Buffalo. Number 2 is Tyler Nubin, who got drafted by the Giants in round 2. Number 3 was Javon Bullard, who got drafted by the Packers on day 2. Next up was Perdichizzi, who fell to the Eagles, and they traded up in round 2. Number 5 is Tyke Smith, who went to the Tampa Bay Bucks. Number 6 is Cameron Kitchens, who went to the Rams. Number 7 is Jaden Hicks, who went to the Chiefs. Number 9 is Kalen Bullock, who went to the Houston Texans. And then number 9 and 10, the top 2 corners in the draft, Terrion Arnold, who went to the Lions. Quinyon Mitchell, who went to the Eagles, followed by a couple other corners. Number 11, Mike Sainristil, who went to the Commanders. 12, Kool-Aid McKinstry, who went to the Saints. 13, Dadrian Taylor Demerson, the versatile chess piece, who went to the Cardinals. Malik Mustafa, who went to the 49ers at 14. And then rounding out my top 15 was Nate Wiggins, who went to the Ravens in round 1. Now, I do think there is an argument to rank these defensive backs in a lot of ways at the top. I don't think there's a lot of separation. I don't think there's a lot of tiers you can kind of do. I kind of think it's pick the guy you look for maybe to get the immediate opportunity, who you think has a higher ceiling, because there's a lot of ways you can rank this. Is this guy definitely going to get a chance to start? Is he going to have to wait it? Is he going to be immediate starter? I look at the top of this list, and I think Cole Bishop and Tyler Nubin, I think are going to be on the field from day one as huge integral parts of the secondary, and they're both going to get an opportunity to immediately contribute. Bishop's got that special athleticism. He's got short area quickness. He's got play strength. He's got the upside to become a starting strong safety. There's a gaping hole in that Buffalo secondary. Jordan Poyer, Hyde, they've moved on from those guys. Bishop's going to get an opportunity to step right in. He profiles more as a strong safety, which means closer to the box, even though these guys are very interchangeable. Opens up the opportunity for a lot of tackle numbers, so that's why Bishop sits at the top of my list here. Tyler Nubin, I think, is going to be a guy that the Giants use in a variety of ways. Obviously, he's got average to good athleticism. I don't think his testing numbers represent his play speed. The rumors are that he came back from an injury to perform at the combine, and that might have impacted his athleticism. But I think his athleticism on film classifies as good. His play speed's good. But what makes him special is he's got great ball skills, great interception, great production, hits good tackler, lot to like about his game. I think the Giants are really going to put him out there immediately to potentially be their number one safety, and start there with Jason Pinnock. So I like Nubin's game there. I really like Cole Bishop, the opportunity he gets there in Buffalo. I think those make those guys stand out. So those would be my number 1 and 2. But Javon Bullard, with Bullard, though, it's how are they going to use him exactly? Is he going to be a nickel corner? Is he going to be a safety? But I love the versatility to his game. He played that like rover position for Georgia. There's a lot to like about his game. He's got cover skills. He's got play recognition. He's got short area quickness, the instincts. So Bullard was, is a guy that I think, depending on how they use him and deploy him, that could impact maybe his tackle numbers or the fantasy production. It's a little bit of an unknown right now. Perdichizzi, same thing. Is he going to be an outside corner? Is he going to be a slot safety type? Is he going to be just a safety? I think that's, if I kind of pigeonholing him right now to be a jack of all trades and be more of that nickel slash safety role. If he's just going to be a traditional outside cornerback, I think I have him too high on this list. But this is a guy who's got special athleticism. He's got straight line speed. He's got closing bursts. He's got ball skills. He's got play strength and physicality. He can help out and run support. A lot to like about his game. Tyke Smith, another guy, really intriguing, undersized safety, good frame, played that star position in college. He's got athleticism, short area quickness, play strength, physicality. Interesting to kind of see how Tampa Bay uses him at the next level. Cameron Kinchins, prior to the pre-draft process, he was looked at as like the number one safety, tested out as an average athlete. I think his play speed's better. He's got great range with ball skills, even though the athleticism didn't show up at the combine. I think the Rams are going to have a plan for him. I really like Kinchin's game. Jaden Hicks, I can't believe he fell to I think it was the late fourth round. I thought he was a round 2, round 3 type guy. I think the Chiefs are going to find themselves a starting safety somewhere on day 3 in this guy. He's another guy that profiles more as a guy who's going to play closer to the line of scrimmage, opens up the tackle possibility numbers, but he does have that draft capital. Late 4th round, it is a safety. Safeties tend to fall, but those, you're not guaranteed a real opportunity to start. He could easily materialize into one. I think he'll get a shot, and I think he'll take it and earn that. But he does work with that draft capital not being ideally what you like to see, which is why I dropped him down a little bit here in my ranks. Kalen Bullock got the upside to become a starting free safety. I think he's more of a guy who, again, are the tackle numbers going to be there with a guy like Kalen Bullock? I know other people have him a little bit higher. I think he's more of a guy that profiles as a starting free safety, playing the center field role, using that athleticism, the range, and the ball skills. Really impactful NFL player. Some concerns about how that translates in terms of fantasy viability, which is why I kind of have him at 8 there. And then the corners, I think Terrion Arnold is the most physical corner in terms of tackling. So I think that his tackle numbers, I think, are going to be higher than the top other cornerbacks in this class. But I really like Quinion Mitchell's game. I think, we haven't even seen the best of him, playing for a smaller school. We saw how he handled the Senior Bowl. Step up in competition. He's not afraid to mix it up as well and be physical and run support. Maybe not as physical as Arnold, but a lot to like about his game as well. And then I talked about him before. I don't know if he's going to get an opportunity in Arizona to materialize, but I really like the versatility of Dadrian Taylor Demerson. He's got upside to become a starter, very versatile. He's got athleticism. He's got good instincts and play recognition, and he's got very good ball skills as well. So there it is, guys. My thoughts in terms of my IDP rookie rankings for Dynasty for the 2024 NFL Draft. I'm hoping to have a guest on from the industry who specializes a little bit more in IDP to kind of pick his brain a little bit in terms of this rookie class, because I don't think it's a strong class. I don't. I think, like I said, I think the linebacker class is as weak as I ever remember it being for IDP rookie rankings. I think the edge group's got a couple guys at top, but not a strong edge group. A couple interesting defensive tackles. Honestly, of all the positions, I think the most depth is in the secondary group, but we also know those are the ones that are most easily replaceable. So I think the strength is the DB class, for so to speak, but that's also the one that there's the most, variance in terms of production and opportunity. So while I think the DBs have the quantity to be the largest quantity of the rookies in terms of positions to have an IDP value, we just know that they tend to fall down the board a little bit. So the top of IDP rookie rankings overall, you're going to see the linebackers, you're going to see the edge guys, before we start seeing secondary guys in there. I just think it's a weak linebacker group, a weak defensive end edge group in terms of fantasy viability. I just don't see a lot of guys that people are going to be that excited to draft besides the guys in like the tier 1 towards the top of these rankings. And then the DBs are kind of just be scattered in a little bit later in your drafts. And then again, the DTs, if it's not a DT, specific league and they're blended in with the D line and the edge guys, well, then you're probably going to see a couple guys like Murphy and Newton get thrown into the mix a little bit. But I do think there's the DT group. If you're talking about just having to pick DTs, I am intrigued with about 6 DTs and then a couple others that have some upside. That might be the second strongest group, believe it or not. And then we would probably go the edge group, and then linebackers, I think, would round out last, even though there's a couple at the top who I think could be very viable. So there it is, guys. If you're enjoying this content, please get over to the website, S2S Football, fastest and easiest way to get there. Check out the premium content tab for $9.99. You could still really help us out and get all the premium notebooks. The rankings notebook is the one that's got the most information for right now. You get all our Dynasty rookie rankings. I just put in yesterday the IDP rookie rankings. They will continue to be updated throughout the summer. Our Devy rankings are in there. My film draft rankings prior to the NFL draft is in there. You get the scouting notebook, which has almost 100 detailed player profiles on the offensive skill players. And then you get the draft projections notebook. And even though the draft is come and gone, it still has thoughts on about 400 players in there, including these defensive guys as well. So some of the things I was reading today are my notes on these defensive prospects as well. It's the best way to support the show and to help us continue to do what we do here. So on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nakano, and myself, thank you for joining us. And we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.